The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to It's a Road Show Friday. We're here at Haymarket Park. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. To my right in the booth, let's hope he doesn't throw me out of the booth, is Connor Clark, as we are here for the Saltdogs home opener for 2023. Just a glorious sun-drenched day. Just an awesome evening for baseball here at Haymarket. The traffic crawling along the Interstate 80 turnoff in our backdrop, Memorial Stadium. If we're kicking, the wind is out of the north, probably about 15 to 25 miles per hour. But going to be a gorgeous night for baseball. Hope you enjoy the next 2 hours as we'll dive into plenty of recruiting, thoughts on Nebraska football, some Husker baseball news, as well as they dropped the second game of their Purdue series earlier today. And can get in touch with us at 489-1240, 489-1240. And if you want to join us on the video stream, you're welcome to do it. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed as well, at H Varsity Radio. And both teams warming up here. The South Shore Railcats in to start the homestand against the Lincoln Saltdogs. Elijah, good to see you. Connor, you can exhale. You made it through another semester, man.
It feels good. I actually finished it today. I had one last thing to do after I drove back yesterday, so it feels good to be done. And, I mean, you said it best, too. Just a sun-drenched day. It's gorgeous outside. It beats the Mother's Day game that we had when it was about 50 degrees and raining. So this is a nice treat.
Well, it's a nice treat because Connor's not used to getting any sunlight during Hail Varsity Radio. Usually we lock him in the studio, and today he actually gets the sun shining on his face. It's a healthy
What
reward.
is this vitamin D you speak of?
I need to get a good base burn before the rest of the season. So this is a great time to do it.
Yeah, I've been happy fat is canned fat, so I find my way in front of the sun as much as I can. Can find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel, and for Connor Clark at C_Clark_27. So big day for Nebraska, potentially, as the news around noontime came down on social media with Daniel Kaelin, really, really talented quarterback from Bellevue West, had committed to Missouri, had been in contact with Nebraska. Nebraska went all in on Dylan Raiola. But, guys, the story of this week was how the week started with Dylan Raiola committing to Georgia and that door being shut. It seems like on Nebraska and everybody else in the country. Meanwhile, Missouri and Coach Drinkowitz did a great job of kind of infiltrating Nebraska, and that's not new news. Nebraska, up until today, with this decommitment by Kaelin, had potentially lost two in-state quarterbacks. Now, we'll see where Kaelin goes. The predictor machine from On3 says 97% chance he ends up at Nebraska. That's where I would lean as well, just because of his interest level with Nebraska and Nebraska's interest level with him. But Elijah and Connor, it really kind of speaks to the transparency part of Matt Rule, where Nebraska was up front about trying to go get Raiola, and all parties involved were aware of that. But good for Nebraska if they do end up flipping this commitment, or when they end up flipping this commitment. We'll see if that becomes a reality. Good for Nebraska keeping after this. You had Flores, of course, from Gretna leave last year, or at least this last recruiting cycle, to get to Oklahoma State. A lot of in-state fans were not happy about that, not ticked off at the kid per se, but you don't want regional or backyard talent to go elsewhere and thrive. If they're right there for you. Well, Nebraska's got a second bite at this apple here with Kaelin to land a 2024 quarterback they've really liked. You have Coach Super Mario that first offered him 2 years ago. So Nebraska's, despite all the transition, tried to stay in communication with him, and we'll see if they can go close.
My question right now is, what's the over-under on how long before he commits to Nebraska? This is like a matter of time.
I'd say he commits this weekend.
Yeah, I was going to put the over-under at probably 6.5 days, and I was going to take the under. You probably got a little juice on the under. That was my take. I don't think you decommit from Missouri unless you already know your next stop. Mm-hmm. And the only next stop that makes any sense whatsoever is Nebraska. I think they probably reached out to him. They've probably done some recruiting over the past couple weeks, and I think he wouldn't decommit unless he already knew Nebraska was going to be the stop for him. That's my take. I haven't talked to the kid, haven't talked to anyone close to the kid, but this is how recruiting goes. If you're been committed for a while to a program that's really shown you a lot of loyalty and then you decommit, that's because you already know your next landing stop. That's what I know about recruiting. Is there exceptions to that rule? Yes, I'm sure. I don't think this is one of them. I think this is a case where Daniel Kaelin already knows he's going to be a Husker. He's going to decommit from Missouri. I'm going to give that a couple days out of respect, and then Sunday afternoon, Monday morning, somewhere in there, I was thinking he would probably announce a commitment to Nebraska. I could be wrong. Maybe he wants to take an official visit to Nebraska first, in which case, congrats to everyone who bet the over. I don't personally believe that's going to matter. You're an in-state kid. You know what Nebraska has to offer. You picked Missouri knowing Nebraska's going after somebody else. I feel like as soon as Nebraska's back into the boat, it's like, whenever you ask a girl out and she tells you she already has a boyfriend, and then she reaches back out like in a couple of months and say, hey, I'm single now. What are you up to? Like, you're going to go on that date. You're going to go see what's up. Like, it's as simple as that.
Has this happened to any of us? Let me just throw.
I was going to ask.
Let's go with the dating analogy here for a second. Has this happened to any of us where we've been told no? I mean, that's a given. That's 100%.
Look at our faces. We have faces
bet.
For radio. We've been told no.
That's
funny.
right.
So somehow they let us on a stream.
Right,
so.
right. I mean, you gotta go digital here, Connor. But no, we've all been given the Heisman. Back away. Get out. No.
Sorry, I have a boyfriend. Whether or not it's true, it's happened.
And we haven't quite gotten to the point where if you're the last man. Example, if you're the last man on earth, maybe. But the point of this is, yeah, you can be told no, but if the boyfriend gets food poisoning, kind of like Wedding Crashers, you swoop right on in. you swoop on in, and listen, this isn't possible if Nebraska and Rule and this staff had taken Kaelin for granted. This isn't possible if they're not up front and saying, hey, we really like you, but this is where we're going to go. And I think credit to Kaelin for understanding the situation. You can still have a chip on your shoulder about being, air quote, second choice, but use that to fuel what you want to do, whether you end up at Nebraska, probably likely, or wherever else. I mean, you still have a bunch of schools that are after him. That includes Miami. That includes Minnesota, just to name a couple. So you want to get an in-state kid, and it'd be a lot of fun if you're a Nebraska fan to see a homegrown in-state talent one day thrive for the program at quarterback. It's been a long time since a guy named Eric Crouch really was behind center, taking Nebraska to the next level. I'm not putting undue pressure on the kid. I'm saying that's the name that comes to my mind from the Omaha Metro, the last Nebraska quarterback to really play at a high level, and Kaelin's got the ability to do it.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to agree with Elijah here too, because there's no reason to do that to a program in Missouri if you don't know where you're going to go, whether that's Nebraska or not, because, I mean, again, a program that's shown you loyalty and all this other stuff, and you've been committed to them for a while, and then all of a sudden, well, this position looks pretty good, and the higher likelihood, according to the professionals in the recruiting space too. I mean, I would agree. Like, even, again, if it's Nebraska or not, which it probably will be Nebraska, it wouldn't really make too much logical sense just to, get up and leave if you didn't have that plan B, so to say, almost in cement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because why even risk that if you're going to play high-level Division I football?
Well, it's a case of there's a program out there that's been loyal to you for a long time, that's recruited you hard for a long time. You've built a good relationship up with their coaches. I don't think you throw that all away. I mean, the only time you hear about people throwing that all away is like, oh, like your positional coach left, took a different job, and now that changes things. None of that happened at Missouri. None of the circumstances changed with what's happening at Missouri. What changed was the circumstances at Nebraska. So you can read in between the lines there and assume that something changed with Daniel Kaelin when those circumstances changed in Nebraska. And we're going to say, I'm assuming Matt Rule reached out to this kid, maybe it was Satterfield that reached out to Daniel Kaelin, made a recruiting pitch, and Daniel Kaelin said, you know what, Missouri, you've shown me a lot of loyalty. You've recruited me hard. I loved what you had with the program, but simply put, circumstances have changed, and now there's a better option for me. That's how I read this here, and you don't make the decision unless you're 100% sure that better option is going to be where you're going to go. What's the point of going out there and saying, I'm decommitting from Missouri, and I'm just going to see what other schools offer me? You've already had a long recruitment. You have already chosen Missouri over a boatload of other schools. It doesn't sound like any of the circumstances with Missouri have changed. Therefore, this is a Nebraska thing. That's why I don't think that's too crazy to say. I think Daniel Kaelin will be a Husker in short order, and that's without speaking to, again, as I said earlier, him or anyone close to him.
Well, and right now, I mean, Missouri's had more success, more recent success on the field. It's a big boy program in the SEC. But if you're Nebraska, if you're Kaelin, if you're Missouri, the difference is you're not going and finding a prettier girl per se. You're going to a blue blood potentially, but it's home. It's in state. It's your backyard. It's your home state program. That does absolutely make a difference.
It's not necessarily a pretty girl, but it's a girl you have a lot more chemistry with.
Sure, that's fair. She has the looks and the personality.
Yes,
Elijah,
it's a better
right?
match.
McMorris and Hall are two high-profile talents as well that are on the national recruiting radar that Nebraska's been in on, and they will do their visits this summer in June. But Coach Huffman has had just a ton of talent at Bell West. He's had an incredible program, does have an incredible program up there, and you figure if you can get 3 T-Birds, that'd be nice. We'll try and run Coach Huffman down here on Monday, get his take on things. You've got Xavier Betts, of course, in the fold right now as he is back and seems to be doing well with Nebraska and Coach Rule. So we'll see where things go with Daniel Kaelin. But it's step one, and that is the decommitment from Missouri. Carter Nelson, state track going on right now, the high-profile tight end from Ainsworth. He is showing out for sure with his talent and athleticism on the track and field side of things. And Nebraska has representatives there today. Auburn out in full force, as is Georgia, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ole Miss. So that's something to watch as well. And you've got your camp schedule. You've got your summer sessions set up. And you know what? Nebraska is going to try and keep on trucking here for 2024. But you feel better if you're a Nebraska fan. Your chances to get a quarterback, get an in-state quarterback, and then see if things can continue to progress with an in-state talent that, no kidding, it was going to hurt losing him to Missouri right after Flores. Brian asks the question. We'll get to the StreamYard questions here and can email the show, Chris@HaleVarsity.com. We're at Haymarket Park. Ligon Saltdogs home opener tonight, a little bit after 6. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. So Brian asks, any news on A.J. Allen or Logan Smothers, potential portal destinations? Yeah, Brian, A.J. Allen's gone to Miami. That was a couple of weeks ago, maybe 7 to 10 days. So A.J. is headed to Miami. I think A.J. would have been probably 4th to start the fall on the depth chart. Logan Smothers, no decision yet. I don't know that Logan comes back. I think Logan wants to play. There's some pretty high-profile programs that are interested in him. But his folks have been doing a lot of travel, fellas. 15-plus hours driving up for every game, not just home but road games. His family's great people, And it'd be nice for him to go earn a spot somewhere and play at quarterback or somewhere else on the offense.
And it should
I think he's going to try and find something closer to home.
And it should be noted with Logan Smothers, is something we talked about with Mitch Sherman a couple weeks ago. Logan's big priority over the past month was graduating college. So that was always number one. It came out that he was going to the portal. He confirmed it. He's going to walk across that stage tomorrow, get his diploma, and that's probably whenever we'll start hearing some news about what Logan Smothers wants to do, whether it's elsewhere, whether it's back. But from what Mitch laid out to us, his number one priority was get graduated from Nebraska and worry about your football career later. So he's going to graduate this weekend. He's going to get the diploma. And I would expect within the next week or 2 weeks is whenever we're hearing what Logan Smothers ends up doing again. I'd lean towards him going elsewhere, probably just playing it slow. There's no advantage to announcing last week or 2 weeks ago as opposed to next week or 2 weeks from now. The summer session hasn't begun yet. So get graduated, then figure out what you want to do. But that's when I'll expect we'll hear some news on Logan Smothers' potential portal destination.
We'll check in with Jacob Padilla, get his thoughts on, of course, Daniel Kaelin. Jacob does a great job of covering the prep scene in the state of Nebraska. Some basketball thoughts with Keisei Tominaga. What's his future hold? We're still waiting on that decision from Keisei. So Jacob Padilla next. Charlie Meyer, president of the Saltdogs, with us this hour. And then Bill Doleman, Brady Oltmans in hour 2. Hail Varsity from Haymarket continues, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow Friday. We're here at Haymarket Park in Lincoln as the traffic crawling in over the bridge here is to get to downtown Lincoln. Memorial Stadium straightaway shot to center field. The downtown skyline of Lincoln, really awesome to see. Is Gary in town? The Saltdogs taking some practice as well. Fall-like field today is 70 degrees, gorgeous weather, a little breezy, but it is super, super comfortable. If you're making your way into town this weekend, into Lincoln, get to a Dogs game. Saltdogs, phenomenal facility, great fun, and always an awesome spot to bring the kids or the grandkids. Get a beer and a dog, a soda, all that good stuff. And Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark.
I want to get Connor's take real quick. This is the first year that we've seen the pitch clock in the American Association. I want to get Charlie Meyer's take on this. From a broadcaster's point of view, what have you thought of the addition of the pitch clock to the American Association?
I like it. I think it's, definitely speeds up the game, obviously, but it's less about the time of the entire game, but more so about the flow. And as a broadcaster in baseball, obviously I'll work with Michael and we'll have plenty to talk about, but it's nice to, just kind of keep going and going and going with the flow of the game. And, Lincoln won 16-12 last night in Sioux Falls. The game was 3 hours and 5 minutes, so you don't really see that a lot. So the pace of play has been great, and as a spectator, I feel the same way. But, it's been great at both ends.
Jacob Padilla joins us from HailVarsity.com and magazine at Jacob Padilla _ on Twitter. It's where you find him. Jacob, how's the week been? Thanks for the time.
Week's been a little busy in that got a lot to work on for the book and the magazine, but life outside of that work has slowed down a little bit. We're kind of at the break in the basketball calendar where no tournaments this weekend and next, and then we get into the high school stuff in June where I'm just watching as opposed to coaching. So it's kind of both busy and non-eventful at the same time.
Well, that's all right, man. You'll gear up. You've been on the road a lot for hoops. I want to get your take on football, though. You do a great job of keeping your eyes on high school football in state. Daniel Kaelin decommitting from Missouri. Your read on that decision, and what do you think of his chances with Nebraska to maybe rekindle that relationship? Maybe it's already headed that direction, but I think he's a super talent, has a lot of weapons to use as well, and if Nebraska can get in there, that'd be a real good thing for him on the recruiting front.
Yeah, everything kind of points that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where this thing is heading, just with the timing of everything. And I think he's a guy that probably was interested in Nebraska the first time and committed elsewhere because he wanted to just have a spot saved. And with Nebraska being in the mix with Royola, they couldn't offer him that spot at that time. But I think now that obviously that avenue is open again, that's probably what led to him reconsidering. And you'd see on social media, like other commits, players on the team already are lighting up his mentions, recruiting him back to Nebraska. So at this point, I'd be surprised if that wasn't where this went. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Kaelin looks like this year in his second year as the full-time starter. Obviously threw for almost 3,200 yards, 64 completion percentage, 36 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That duel that he and Zane Flores had during the regular season was a lot of fun, just back and forth. Some big time throws, and definitely showed some areas where you would look to see some improvement. Again, was a first year starter this past season. Although he had played quite a bit previously in kind of the dual quarterback system the previous year. So he's definitely interesting that he's another, like, not necessarily true dual threat, although he averaged 4.5 yards a carry this year, had a few touchdowns. He isn't a guy that's afraid to scramble, but very, very much more so a passing quarterback. And kind of seemed like that was part of the discussion with Sims versus Keisei Thompson. So interesting to kind of see how the season plays out and how the recruiting continues to play out as we kind of learn what Matt Rule wants his offense to look like, what he wants his quarterbacks to look like, and kind of how all those fall into place.
Jacob, how important do you think it is that Nebraska gets a quarterback in this class of 2024? Because you've heard it out there. Well, Nebraska feels good about the quarterback room as it stands right now. You always have the portal in your back pocket should you not get a quarterback this class. But simply put, in college football, the quarterback position is what you build your recruiting class around. At least that's what the standard is in college football. You get your quarterback in any given class, and you go build that class around that quarterback. And I want to get your thoughts on just how important it is that Nebraska gets a guy like Daniel Kaelin in the boat in this class of 2024.
In this class in particular, just like with the number of in-state recruits that are in there, and he's got relationships with some of them. Heck, he plays with some of them. He throws to some of them and knows some of the others. I think that would probably go a long way towards the peer recruiting aspect of continuing to try to lock down those borders and land the majority of the kids in state that are capable of playing at the Power 5 level. But it's hard now to know what to think of the quarterback position and the best way to operate. And again, like you said, with the portal, with the way things are now, you'd love to be able to land a high school recruit and build him up and have him turn into a multi-year starter. And if you can do that, that's great. But if you miss, or if a guy doesn't develop, you can just as easily go try to convince one of the top guys in the portal, like, hey, we've got a spot for you. You can come in right away and be the missing piece and put this kind of push this thing over the top. So you'd obviously rather have one than not. But in terms of kind of the overall importance of always landing a quarterback, at this point, I'm not sure what that is.
Jacob Padilla is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. How quickly, Jacob, do you think that Nebraska will get that commitment? Because we were talking about that in hour one. Elijah set the over-under on days at 6.5, and we have 2 takers of the under. I haven't put a bet in yet, but we have 2 takers of the under.
Yeah, I guess I'd take the under if you're giving me like basically a full week almost, but I have no idea kind of what timeline he's operating, kind of what you never know with these kids, if there's a certain date they're looking for, if there's something they're trying to do beforehand. But for a second time commit that's already kind of gone through this, if this is indeed what he wants to do, I would imagine that he's not going to wait too long. So I guess I'd take the under on that 6.5, but I have no indication, like no reporting anything to know like when that might actually happen. But just kind of seems like maybe take a deep breath after decommitting and kind of reevaluate everything. But I would guess sooner rather than later if I had to.
Jacob Padilla is with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Jacob, let's talk a little Husker hoops and thoughts on Keisei Tominaga and the timeline for him end of May. And I know Keisei did not get an NBA Combine invite. I know he didn't get a G League invite. He's been putting the work in, though, weight room-wise. And that's just some news and notes from Coach Hoiberg with the network this week. And I know you followed that interview, but what's the word on the street about Fred and this squad here this summer before the international trip?
Yeah, it definitely seems like things are trending towards Tominaga returning just based on the tea leaves of not being in those top 100, however many players between the two camps that NBA decision makers are interested in. But he will get a couple of workouts. It sounds like Hoiberg's got those lined up for him over these next couple of weeks here before leading up to the deadline, and they'll sit down and make the decision. But I think the way that everything's planned out, or has played out, I think Nebraska fans can probably be optimistic about a Keisei Tominaga return and what that'll look like and what that'll mean for the team. Keisei's heading back overseas to participate with the Japanese national team again. Hoiberg said that'll happen in June, so we'll kind of see what that looks like for him. But I think he's got a chance to come back and have a really, really strong year next year, especially with some of the pieces they put around him. Hoiberg mentioned that obviously they've got the Spanish trip that they're taking in July, and mentioned there are a couple of guys that are probably not going to be ready to compete at that point. So it'll be interesting to see. Kind of, he said he's not sure yet how he plans to handle those games in terms of the rotation and getting everybody chances to play. But that'll be our first real look at some of these guys in a Husker uniform and kind of how the pieces fit together. So it's a good time to have one of those off-season trips here with they've got 5 newcomers already with a couple other scholarships still hanging out there that could see maybe another addition or two, depending on how things play out after the NBA withdrawal deadline. Hoiberg mentioned there's some players that have already entered the portal there that are kind of weighing a return to college and a transfer versus staying in the draft. Graduate transfers, they don't have to operate on the portal timeline. So if guys finish up their degrees here and decide you want to kind of test the market, it could be someone that Nebraska looks into. So they're still recruiting. They missed out on the 2023 kid that they were just looking at. He committed to Texas Tech today, I believe. So that's off the table, and it didn't kind of seem like that's the way things were headed. So I don't know that comes as a surprise. I'm sure they had already moved on with kind of their plans for those last 2 scholarships. But yeah, it's going to be an eventful offseason for these guys as they build up towards the next season.
Jacob, I'm not sure if you know this as we got to get you out, and Schmidt, I don't mean to step on your toes here, but I've been working my sources that are the Uber drivers in the city of Lincoln, and one trusted source tells me he had Keisei in his car earlier today, and Keisei said he remains truly undecided. So take that as you will. Keisei telling local Uber drivers he doesn't know where he's going right now.
Thank you, Uber.
Yeah, like I said, you got a couple weeks here to go through some workouts. I think most of these guys that enter the draft, they do with the intention of wanting to go pro. Like obviously here, just enter and get the feedback. When they do it, they're hoping to get the feedback that tells them, hey, you got a chance here. I think the kind of realization after that feedback comes back, if it's not quite what they were hoping to, that's when you kind of see that shift and those decisions made. So I'm sure a lot of these guys that enter going, yep, undecided, but we'll find out here in a couple weeks.
Jacob, have a good weekend, bud. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Thanks, guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow Friday here at Haymarket Park. The Lincoln Saltdogs home opener for 2023 gets going as the Dogs continue to warm up out in right field. Gary is in town with us. As you can check us out on the stream, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter, at HVarsity Radio, KFOR Sports Facebook and Twitter. Charlie Meyer with us, president for the Saltdogs. Season 22, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, it's incredible. It's kind of hard to believe it. 22 years ago, this place opened up on June 1st, and here we are 22 years later, getting ready to start another season at Haymarket Park. Well,
it is awesome. It's been such a gem for the city of Lincoln, and quite honestly, so many folks over the years have come in to not only experience Haymarket, but experience Saltdog baseball, Charlie, and you've been a monster part of that, my friend. And I'm anxious with are you shooting the fireworks later, or are you just observing?
I'm observing. We got we always have a great show on Friday nights, and with Landis Fireworks out of Sioux City, they come down and shoot the fireworks, and we have a great show for the fans, and looks like we're going to have a great night here at the ballpark on opening night. Did
you order the fall-like, spring-like weather? This is gorgeous.
Well, I wish I could control that, but no, it's got a beautiful day here, and it should be a great evening here at the ballpark.
Well, let's talk a little bit about folks and what they can plan to do, and what's so awesome about the Saltdogs. Not only is it great baseball, but it's such an experience for families. I remember all for over the years, the LPS would come out with the kids and experience baseball, but that's been a priority number one from the get-go, is just to make it an experience.
Yeah, and that's really the goal. I sat down and talked with the incoming interns today, and just kind of gave them the philosophy of what we do here. It's family, it's fun, it's affordable, entertainment, and we want that. Want those kids and those families to come and experience something that's unique and different, and we'll have some between inning promotions and throwing T-shirts and doing different things that make it fun. We got the kids area, the Buck Belcher bullpen area, and then Emeritus Fun Zone, so kids have opportunities to go do different things around the ballpark. Sometimes baseball's maybe 2 or 3 innings too long for people to sit around and watch, but now with the pitch clock and everything, games are starting to speed up, it looks like. We'll see what it's like here tonight. It will be the first time we'll operate with the pitch clock here at Haymarket Park, so it should be interesting.
Charlie Meyer's with us here, GM of the Saltdogs at Hail Varsity Radio. And Charlie, you got to tell us about some of those promotions, the reason to get you into the ballpark. I know you're bringing back Thirsty Thursdays, one of my favorite nights of the week. We got Wiener Wednesdays, Firework Fridays. I believe Saturdays this year is $3 select tall boys, if I remember correctly. Just take us through some of the...
Elijah's all about hydration, if you can't tell.
That's good, Elijah. I like you. No. Yeah, basically we got the Triple Play Tuesdays that basically people come out, donate some food, and they'll get a ticket to the game, and we'll donate to the food bank here in Lincoln. But we got Wiener Wednesday, $2 hot dogs. We got Thirsty Thursday, as you already mentioned, Fireworks Fridays, Souvenir Saturdays, and then we got Family Fun Sundays. And basically we get families can buy a ticket and get a hot dog and a soda and some chips for $15 to come out to the ballpark on Sundays. And so, again, those are the fun things we try to do and try to make that consistent so people understand what's happening each and every week at the ballpark. Then we throw in the giveaways, the different types of giveaways. We'll have a volleyball night this year. That'll be that in the middle of July. And then we've got a Saltdog jersey giveaway. We got a Saltdog hat giveaway. We got different things that'll be happening tonight. Strikeout Stroke night. So the Strikeout Stroke folks will be here with May being the Strikeout Stroke Awareness Month, and it's fun to just it'll be fun to see people come out to the ballpark again. I mean, that's probably the biggest joy I get out of all the work we do to get season tickets sold, sponsorships sold, all the different things, getting the team put together and that type of thing. But watching people and families walk into Haymarket Park, that's probably the most uplifting and great experience here. And like I said, we're lucky with Lincoln, Nebraska, and basically the view you have here, whether the Saltdogs are ahead 7-0 or behind 7-0, you can see Memorial Stadium, the Capitol, and downtown Lincoln. The skyline's beautiful. How
about the skyline as the last 20 years? I mean, it's still beautiful, but it's growing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And, Pinnacle Bank Arena wasn't here. We kind of created the sports triangle here with football, baseball, and basketball, and No, it's we're very blessed, and it's been a great opportunity. Jim Abel had a great vision of where he wanted this ballpark to be put, and working with the university back 20 plus years ago, and I think we got one of the best minor league ballparks, let alone collegiate ballparks in the country that we both share and make it work.
Charlie Meyer joining us here, Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow Friday. We're out here at Haymarket Park, the Saltdogs home opener for 2023, and just a gorgeous Friday night to get out to the ballpark. But also, saltdogs.com is where you can log on and find out. And you have different ticketing packages too. If you know, listen, it's family reunion time. Let's get everybody out here, and that way we can sneak away or spend time with the beloved family.
Yeah, spend time with the beloved family. Yeah, we got various, with the home run terrace area, the Pepsi home run terrace areas, and all you can eat and drink experience. We got suites, we got group tickets. I mean, and they're very fairly priced. I mean, it's not unaffordable. It's a much different experience than going to a major league ballpark and trying to get 20 to 50 people in the ballpark and adding food and all that type of thing.
Have you had the pleasure of taking Junior to a major league game? I have.
I have, and I took my back a number of years ago. We had our All-Star game back in New Jersey, and my kids were loved the Yankees so well. We got to go see the Yankees, and we go see the Red Sox, and those were very expensive days, but it was created some great memories, a lot of fun. But yeah, the price point of going to some of those major league ballparks, which it's beautiful to go do that,
sure,
but it's not a cheap venture, unfortunately.
Well, Charlie, there's a lot of good reasons to get out and see the Saltdogs. Price point being one, a great way to take the family out, but also the on-field product this year on the diamond. I know there's some familiar faces for the Saltdogs this year, a couple former Huskers. Take us through the roster this year and what we can expect to see from the Dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I think here we are, I'm 22 years, and I guess I'm getting old here, but this might be one of the youngest teams we've put together in the off season. Brett Jody's back here for his third year, and we're really excited about having him back. But yeah, we got Luke Roscom, a former Husker, and Josh Rader, who's going to be pitching tonight in our home opener, which is, it was fun to see when he showed up here the first part of May, and just for him to kind of reminisce about his days when he was a Husker and that type of thing. And he walked in and just said, "Wow, this park is still incredible." And but yeah, we're excited to have him, and we've got some guys new guys that have showed up this year. One guy, Connor Panis, that we tried to get here all last year, and we had a visa issue. We couldn't get him through immigration to get him down here to get his P1, and he's here with us this year, and so that's been a good addition. Nate Sampson, we picked up late last year from Sioux City, is a great. Those are the kind of the veteran guys at our squad, and Daniel Perez, we just finally got into town here. He'll be starting tonight with us, so we're excited about that side of it. The pitching side of it, or I'll be honest with you, our starting pitching hasn't started very well on the road.
Charlie, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We're up against a hard timeout. Okay. More with Charlie Meyer after this on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this first hour, it's Hail Varsity presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Charlie Meyer, president with the Saltdogs with us. Home opener for the Dogs happening tonight. Get down to Haymarket here in Lincoln. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous Friday night. And, Charlie, we were smiling about some of the fun times as part of the Saltdog family over the last 22 years.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, your brother Marcus was an intern here, and we had a great summer when those kids were here. And
it tells you about your patience and tolerance level.
No, they were a good group. It was a lot of fun, and I think they got a great experience as far as, a lot of those kids in our intern classes each and every year, they're trying to figure out whether they want to get in this business, and it's really eye-opening for them because there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that don't, that the normal person doesn't realize what's going on. But no, it's always fun to get a new crop of interns each and every year and have them just have fun at the ballpark. That's what I told them today. Have fun. That's what it's all about. So
Charlie, last thought here, and thanks for giving us a few minutes on home opener. It's so gracious of you. We were talking pitching. We went through a little bit of the Nebraska connection here with Roscom and company. Pitching is going to round into form.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. We've got our 6 games here on the road trip. Our starting pitching wasn't very good, and that's just kind of the cycle of baseball. And fortunately, our bullpen's been really well, and our the guys, the bats have been. I mean, we've scored runs, so it's not a problem from that standpoint. But it'll be interesting to see now that we get home here and see. Hopefully, the starting pitching can settle down a little bit. And last night, playing up in Sioux Falls, if you've ever been there, they call it the bird cage, and there's a reason they call it the bird cage. I mean, there's balls flying out of that place. So there's
16-12.
Yeah, 16-12.
Take the over.
Yeah, and the thing was, I was listening to it when it started. We were down 5-0. I was going, oh boy, this is going to be a fun night for Brett. And I talked to him when he was driving back last night, and so it was just one of those. It's one of those games, and pitching, when pitching isn't very good, those things happen, unfortunately. And so we'll see what happens here. Josh Raiders struggled a little bit in his first start. Hopefully, coming here tonight, he'll turn it around a little bit. We'll see what happens.
Charlie, the pitching staff is rounding into things, but for our listeners here locally on KFOR, that the broadcast team's already in mid-season form. Michael Dixon back for another year. Tell us a little bit how fans can listen to the Saltdogs this summer.
Yeah, that basically will be on 1240 AM and 101 FM here throughout the summer, home and away. Michael Dixon and Connor will be a partner with him here at Haymarket Park, but Michael will be a solo on the road, but all 50 games as well as home games, his 50 away games are all be covered on KFOR. So partnership's been long and strong for 20-some years too, and so it's we're excited about that. And like I said, it's hard to believe that here we are in year 22 and starting another season.
Charlie, good to be with you. Thanks so much for everything.
Thanks, Schmidt. It's always fun to catch up with you and, tell your family hello, and look forward to seeing you at the ballpark.
Well, we're absolutely excited to have Charlie Meyer with us. A name familiar to a lot of Dogs fans. The Pride of Fairbury is in the on-deck circle. Bill Doleman will kick off hour number 2 here on Hail Varsity Roadshow here at Haymarket Park. The Saltdogs home opener. Connor Clark on the road with me here in the press box. And Elijah Herbel back in studio. Brady Oltmans, Hail Varsity, coming up in hour 2. More on Nebraska's pursuit of Daniel Kaelin as he decommitted from Missouri. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, it's hour 2, Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow Friday here at Haymarket Park. The Saltdogs home opener for 2023. Just a beautiful Friday. Wind is pretty stiff out of the north, but it is fall-like, right around 70 degrees. We welcome in the Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports. The Professor Bill Doleman knows the Saltdogs well, as he is hunkered down in his office during finals week. At Bill Doleman on Twitter. Billy D, are we going to turn this into parent-teacher conferences, as Connor Clark is to my right, and he was matriculating in the Bill Doleman, dare I say, forum in 4A. How was that? Are we going to be easy, or is it going to be sit back and watch time for me and Elijah?
Well, it does feel a little bit like we have called him into the principal's office to have a little talk, right? So I'm glad we're all able to take a little time out of your busy schedules to get together, because we do have some concerns. And, let's face it, at this point, I'm just hoping that Connor enjoys the experience that he's having right now, because...
Is it too late for me to leave?
Well, I can almost guarantee Connor's parent-teacher conferences growing up went something like this. Connor's a pleasure to have in class. He's a little bit chatty at times, and we have to keep him in check. But we love having Connor in class. Was it something like that?
I mean,
No.
Well, it might be a lot more harsh now, but considering the people in the room, but I don't know. Was I a joy to have in class? I mean, that's up for you to decide.
Well, yeah, you're all right. I'm a little more worried, though. I have gone back in the records to the other two guys here, and my God, how either one of you guys got out of UNL is shocking.
Hey, I got
out of here when grades were done in pencil, so I can take care of my stuff. If I go back into the logs and look at my permanent record that nobody ever has seen before. But you two guys, how you made it through, I have no idea. I can still do something about Connor.
Elijah made it through with a 4.0. I did not.
No, I did not. No. Well, actually...
Just take the compliment. Just take it.
Yeah, Elijah was academic brilliant. I don't know how I got in. I had 2 freshman years. Fine, it happens. I found broadcasting. That was awesome. Now, my master's program and my postgraduate GPA was actually pretty good. It's unfinished, but it's it's close. Yeah, so don't look too hard. All right, quit digging, Doleman, on my grades.
Well, look. I know Connor's initials are C and C, and you might as well just add another one to it.
Oh wow.
Hey, they get degrees, so.
Yeah. C is for cookie. It's good enough for me. Okay, so Doleman, we got to get your thoughts on Matt Rule trying to woo the Bellevue West quarterback Daniel Kaelin. He flipped, or I should say decommitted. Nebraska will no doubt try and flip him if they haven't already to get an in-state quarterback. That's the bookend of this week. The start of the week was Raiola to Georgia, and good on Nebraska chasing Raiola like they did, and good on Nebraska if they can get an in-state quarterback that's a pretty high-level talent to come to Lincoln, who's been interested in Nebraska but was not the priority.
Look, I don't know Daniel Kaelin. I only know what I have seen of him and watching him play and all of the articles that have been written about him during the course of this recruiting cycle. So that said, just having been an observer of this whole process for the last, 57 years, I would imagine that, again, my perspective, you're in the month of March and you've got an opportunity from an SEC school, and they probably put the squeeze on him a little bit. But if you're him and you're a 3-star, not a 5, not a 4, and you've got an SEC school that says here's a scholarship, you probably are jumping on it and saying, I got to get the deal while I can. I would assume he's smart enough to know that he did not have the same kind of leverage that Dylan Raiola played with over the last several months in terms of I've got all of these suitors from Georgia to L.A. to Oregon to Nebraska, and I can really do whatever I want whenever I want to do it. Daniel Kaelin, I don't think had that kind of leverage. He took the opportunity, committed to Missouri, and now things have changed on the recruiting landscape. Raiola has made his move, and so now Kaelin opens up his recruitment. Is it Nebraska? I would assume Nebraska's never really given up on him and said, look, if things don't go our way, we're going to be honest with you. This is what our priority has to be. But if not, we are going to be in contact with you. And I assume that Michigan State and Miami and Ole Miss and whomever else has been after him will also be coming to Kaelin, and he may enjoy being courted again. But it is interesting that in the same week that he's decommitted from Missouri, it's the same week that Dylan Raiola makes his commitment to Georgia, and Nebraska is now looking for one. It's very convenient, and I think that just speaks to, look, Matt Rule has said we can't let what happened with Teddy Rizak happen anymore. And if there's a possibility to get a high-level player, even though he's a 3-star, a high-level player in our backyard, we have to go after it. And I credit them for that. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, right? There's going to be a lot of other people calling that kid, but Nebraska certainly has to be in the game right now.
Bill, I'm going to pose the same question to you that I posed to Jacob Padilla back in hour one. How important is it that Nebraska gets a quarterback in this 2024 recruiting class? I know you don't like talking about recruiting as a whole, but I feel like when you look bigger picture, you can step back and take a look at that's what the tradition has been in recruiting over the past 20 years. You build your recruiting class around that centerpiece of a quarterback. That's where you start your class, and you build your class around that. Do you think it was important that Nebraska at least got a single quarterback in this class of 2024? Do you think that the transfer portal has changed that?
I think the transfer portal has changed that dramatically, and I've been wondering, why is it that it seems like if they don't get Raiola, that they got to go get somebody? What's wrong with the guys that are already in the system? And I know they've lost a few. I get that Logan Smothers is still looking around, and maybe he comes back. I get that Casey Thompson is gone and Richard Torres is gone, but Heinrich Harburg is still around. They got the guy that transferred from Ole Miss that everybody seems to have forgotten about, and I forget his last name, but Jack something or other. There are quarterbacks in the room, right? And people were excited when those guys committed to Nebraska. Heinrich Harburg, I believe, was a 3-star, the same as Daniel Kaelin is. So they have players. Is it important to get the guy that you really want, which was Raiola, so that you can have that centerpiece in this class? Yeah, probably. But if it's not the guy that you want, then why do you force it when the era of the transfer portal that you have to go out and get somebody, especially at this stage? But if Kaelin says, I want to come to Nebraska, and you're 60 miles away from campus, I think Nebraska absolutely has to go get somebody like that. But to force it and go get somebody out of Massachusetts or wherever else they're looking just to say, we got one, I'm not sure that those are resources that are best spent, especially if you're trying to get that scholarship limit down from 100 to 85, and you've got some walk-on players on campus that people say deserve scholarships. So, it's a numbers game that Nebraska has to play and win at this point.
Bill Doleman's with us on Hail Varsity Radio, and when it comes to recruiting in-state talent, and we've talked about this on this show for a number of weeks now throughout the offseason, the fact that if you do get the commitment, what does that say about Coach Rule and the coaching staff as a whole being able to effectively recruit a quarterback who is committed to an SEC school, maybe not overdoing it, but effectively staying in his ear, and then when a situation like this presents itself, you have a very high likelihood of landing a player of his caliber?
Okay, first of all, good job of asking an open-ended question that was well-informed and well-framed.
Getting a C+ this time.
Put that down in the grade book. That's a positive, so we're working on a C+. Anyway, I think it speaks to one very important thing is that as Matt Rule has assimilated himself and his staff to Nebraska, that they really have gotten a very good understanding of how important this place is to everybody around this place. They made it a point to go out and visit, and especially Matt Foley's dad, Ed, that they made it a point to visit as many high schools around the state, as many cafeterias around the state, cafes, taverns, every place named Brunswick in the state of Nebraska, to get to know what the culture is. And I believe they have probably come to the realization like, wow, this place really cares. And so if there's a player that is in our backyard and he's a quality player, we have got to make every effort that we can to keep those players who are important to the rest of the state in the borders. So I would imagine when Daniel Kaelin committed to Missouri, that Nebraska said, don't throw away our number. We're still going to be calling because we don't know how things are going to play out. So I think it's just a real testament to them getting an understanding of what they have in terms of the program, the state, the people, all of that. And I commend them for that.
Bill, get a switch up, and CBS Sports says their re-rankings of the top coaches in college football for 2023. And I want to ask you, who's the most overrated coach in college football, in your opinion? Who do you think the best coach is in college football, and who do you think the next star coach is in college football?
Wow, most overrated coach in college football. That is pretty loaded. It wasn't a poll, so that if we knew that it was a poll, that Matt Rule would be the number one coach in all of college football. No question about that, because that's how Nebraska fans react in the summer when they put those polls out. Mm-hmm. Most overrated coach in college football. I hope it is not, but I fear that it might be Michigan State, Mel Tucker. Mm. 1 year at Colorado, and then he jumps to take the money at Michigan State, has had a couple of seasons there, and I don't know that they have necessarily gotten their investment yet. That doesn't say that they won't have it, but there's a lot of talk and a lot of bluster for a team, that after a good first season, came back down to earth pretty hard up there in the woodshed. So I think there's something to prove there, especially with the amount of money that he is making. And that probably makes him more the overrated class than anything. Maybe at $4 million, he's not overrated. At $9 million, come on, you got to get your money's worth. Who's the up and coming star? If it's somebody who's already got a job as a major program, two of them come to mind. And Shane Beamer at South Carolina, I think is under the radar there, but he's young, he's contemporary, he gets it. And they got a couple of big wins last year. That fan base is really pretty well jazzed. You might see them, in 4 or 5 years, if he stays there and Nick Saban finally decides he's going to retire, that you're going to see South Carolina perhaps in the mix, with some major programs. And I think Kellen DeBoer out at Washington is fantastic.
Bill Doleman's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Bill, while we're talking coaches here, the official hot seat rankings for college coaches yet to release yet this offseason, but for the first time in a while, Nebraska will not be included on that list. When you look at the Big Ten, what coaches do you think should be on any hot seat as this 2023 offseason ramps up, we get ready for fall football?
Well, what?
Schiano?
Well, Tom Allen's got to be at the top of the list.
He does.
Well,
Tom
Allen. Look, I think that there is a hot seat in Iowa City.
Really?
His loyalty to one particular person on his coaching staff, I think is, I think that Kirk Ferentz and having Brian Ferentz be the offensive coordinator, that was a bad move, and they're just tone deaf as to how inept they have been for the most part. I think offensively, not just last year, but that's a pretty boring offense for the most part. He's not going to get fired after all this time, but it just really has to be uncomfortable there, especially after you lost to Nebraska the way that you did at the end of the season. They got to come to Lincoln next year. I think that might be a seat that's may not be hot, but I really think it's uncomfortable after all this time, and especially when, given Nebraska's last 20 years of not having any success, Nebraska fans can always say, what have you folks over there won ever? And the answer will always be nothing.
I don't know what's more uncomfortable, Captain Kirk's seat or his couch, because if he does the right thing and gets rid of Junior, he'll be on the couch till the end of time.
Yeah. There's no. That's a dynamic that's of their own doing, and perhaps undoing. They're not going to get rid of the guy. He's going to be able to go whenever he wants to go because he's sort of earned that. But they haven't won anything. They've never won a Big Ten or a title or been in contention for the national title or anything like that. And it's just their own uncomfortable undoing in terms of all the goodwill built up over a quarter century. I also hate to say this in terms of hot seats, but, maybe Pat Fitzgerald, if anybody actually cared about Northwestern, it's the Schnapps Bottle Stadium that I talk about. They're going to put money into that place, and there's still not going to be anybody who shows up there. They go 1-11 last year, and still
after
nobody cares.
It's too bad because they've done really great work, but they're hosed. They are absolutely hosed, them and Stanford, when it comes to the transfer portal.
And if I'm Iowa, I look at Pat Fitzgerald as maybe a potential future Kirk Ferentz replacement.
Hey, that's not bad. That's really well played. Nice. I'm going to give you an A on that. Retroactively,
if I'm Fitz, I just move to the AD chair. That's what I do.
Yeah, that's true. But it's a tough job at Northwestern, and they're not going to get anybody better than what they have.
Bill, we'll talk this weekend, bud. Thanks for a few minutes.
All right, go Big Red. See you guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio here at Haymarket Park. Friday home opener for the Dogs for 2023. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Connor Clark went to find Bill Doleman in his office and arm wrestle him. Connor is off to do some of his Saltdog duties. Thanks for Connor joining us. Brady Oltmans in with us from HailVarsity.com and magazine. Brady, I know you're locked in. You're always working, dude, and it's great stuff with HailVarsity.com and magazine. But I got to tell you, as I stare out the booth, it is just glorious weather. I mean, it's track and field weather, it's baseball weather. It's a good weekend here in the good life.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm not sure if really anything happened sports news-wise in the last week since we got to talking, but at least the weather held up for us.
Well, it's like the beautiful sunshine after the storm, right? And it's been a week. We'll get there to the quarterback spot in a moment, but it is track and field going on. And you know, you've been following Carter Nelson and his recruitment pretty heavily, and a lot of name programs, a lot of helmets, right, on hand to watch track and field. And that is Nebraska, that is Auburn, that is Georgia, and Penn State and Notre Dame and Ole Miss. And I'm sure one of the grandstands filled with more college football representatives. But where do things stand timeline-wise? I know Carter's supposed to head to Georgia, but where are things shaping up with Nebraska in this race? Interested to get your take on the talent from Ainsworth.
Oh, man. Well, it sounds like Nebraska will try to get him in for an official visit, probably for that big June 23rd, I think it is, on hand, the big primary recruiting weekend that they want. I've talked to a couple of people, and it sounds like there's a potential that Carter might be very curious and hold off his commit. He doesn't feel like he's on a timeline at all, so there's really no decision imminent. He might be watching and waiting to see how Nebraska utilizes their tight ends this fall.
Okay.
I think that's one thing that appeals to him. Obviously, there's the spring season kind of gave way. Like, Nebraska's going to utilize tight ends. You saw not only in run blocking and polling, but in pass routes, that they like to utilize their tight ends in a couple different ways. As you noticed this weekend, the quarter zip season is out in full well, so he's very highly sought after by multiple conferences and multiple schools within those conferences. So it's going to be really curious to see what shakes out. But Nebraska's in a pretty good spot for him.
Brady, do you have any word or any insight on what the relationship is like between Carter Nelson and Daniel Kaelin?
I know that they've talked a little bit, especially since, Carter's been to Lincoln a couple of times, I guess several times now in total, and I think they've met along the way. I'm not sure how often they're texting, or I'm not sure if they really chat each other up. There's just a lot of proximity there in classification and geography, but it's also in-state recruiting, so there is definitely some overlap there. Guys tend to talk and see how things are going with each other.
But no direct quotes. I dream of playing with a quarterback like Kaelin, nothing like that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. They like Friday Night Lights. They met up at midnight at Schlotsky's old field and ran routes for an hour and a half.
Need a little more spit on the ball, Kaelin.
Yeah.
All right. Well, use your hands and not your body, Carter.
Yeah. Put it out there for me, buddy. I'll get it.
Yeah. Just throw it up. Brady Oltmans with us here, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Get your subscription today and do yourself a favor. The Hail Varsity yearbook is going to be out soon. It is your college football Bible if you're a Nebraska football fan, and can get that subscription, the digital, the print. And part of that print is the yearbook. HailVarsity.com/offer is where you can go now to get some deals and get that subscription. All right, Daniel Kaelin, we've spent a lot of time today on it. I wanted to start off with Carter Nelson and just kind of get your gauge there. When it comes to Kaelin, though, you followed his recruiting process. You know that Missouri was really in on him. He loved Drinkowitz. He loved Drinkowitz's offense. Yet, when this spot opened up or the committable offer opened up for the quarterback of 2024, once Dylan Raiola said Georgia's on my mind, Nebraska was able to come back and you would believe help push this flip to be a reality at some point. But he decommitted from Missouri, did Kaelin. What's your take on that, and what's it say to you about Nebraska being able to be still in consideration despite not making him their number one quarterback on the board?
Yeah, well, it's really impressive to see Matt Rule and his staff and the way that they kind of went about it. They like Danny Kaelin. They made that abundantly clear throughout during that coaching transition as they were setting up their recruiting board. They really liked Danny and what he had to offer. It got him in January, I believe, or they talked in January, and they made the decision to basically go all in on Dylan, which I think even Danny and his family were like, hey, we're not going to fault you for that. Number one overall recruit, everything like that, and then Danny kind of shopped it around. He had to go about his business too. He took visits to North Carolina, to Miami. He went and did camps on the West Coast. I mean, it's not like, Danny is just kind of like waiting around for someone to call. I mean, he's getting he just decommitted from an SEC school. He's getting ACC offers and visits and everything like that. I mean, he went about his business, but I think that there is a special tie and tether that Nebraska has. I know Danny has mentioned before of like he really enjoys the staff, both Rule and coach and administrative and assistant coaching staff at Nebraska. I think there's some appeal there. It certainly seems like at this point, especially timing-wise, that he might actually stay in state and Nebraska might get this flip committed. He's a really good mobile passer. People have comped him to a Kirk Cousins, just the way that he operates. And I think looking at how Marcus Satterfield operates his offense, that's the kind of quarterback that I think could work well with the weapons that they have within Nebraska's offense.
Brady, do you think Kirk Cousins is a fair comparison? Because I've seen that out there before, and I don't think it's perfectly like for like, but I do see where that comparison comes from. Do you think that's fair? Or is there somebody else in mind that you have for Kaelin with what you've seen out of him?
It's a good question because I've heard Kirk is the most often comp, and I think at this point, like I'm just like, sure, whatever. Like
I'd take a college Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. Well, but looking at him, it's like seeing, his Bell West tape, and especially with another year to go, he's a little bit more mobile. He's able to square up his shoulders a little bit better and utilize his feet a little bit better, which I definitely think is a big, props for him. And with Satterfield and in the offense, Rule has mentioned throughout spring ball that like he likes Jeff Sims' role in his mobility. They like quarterbacks with mobility, and Danny is able to provide that. And I think that they could get him in and develop him, work a little bit more on that and squaring up the shoulders, keeping his feet lively. I mean, Kirk is probably the easiest one to make, but you're also talking about a junior in high school, Kirk Cousins. Nebraska and this coaching staff is looking at what Danny Kaelin could be, if he were to commit and end up at Nebraska still in several months' time.
And the name that comes to mind for me, and it's not like the most relatable comparison, I really think from his film, he reminds me of like what we've seen with Taylor Heineke from the Washington Commanders. The game plan as a defense is not going to be to stop this guy's legs. That's not what you come into a game with. But if you leave him open, he will burn you with the legs. If you don't take that into account, I guess is the best way to put it. Like his game is not beating you with his legs, but he is willing to do that should it come down to that.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because the other one that kind of stood out to me was like an older, like Alex Smith. Speaking of Washington quarterbacks, I mean, that was one that kind of, again, he's not going to beat you with his legs, but he's going to break 2 or 3 plays a game that's going to say, okay, we at least have to account for it. Otherwise, they're just going to milk clock and milk possession, and they're going to take the game away.
So we've got number 1 pick overall. We have multiple-time Pro Bowler. That's the comps we're going with into a senior to be. I love it. Well done, Phil.
Taylor Heineke is fair. He made a playoff game. I think he won one playoff game, but he was a little bit slept on during his time in college. Came in and had to outwork some people. I think that's a fair comparison.
I want to ask you this, Brady. Listen, in the era we're in with quarterbacks, if you don't start, you leave. And that's a reality in every program. We were talking to Coach Barnett about this a few weeks back, and I said, well, we were asking him, what do you do about the quarterback situation? His take was get find some dudes, and there's a lot of talent in the state of Nebraska, you're more likely to get guys to stay and develop if they're homegrown kids. Well, you've got Harburg, and if Nebraska can get the flip with Kaelin, those are two instances here where, okay, because they want to be part of the in-state program, they may be less likely to bolt sooner rather than later, opposed to somebody from somewhere else.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, and I think that that's kind of it's getting backed up with the stats, you know, like I can't remember if I was talking with you guys or who I was talking with, but when the Raiola thing was still out there and a possibility, you know, that would have been a huge get, but at a time where keeping a high caliber quarterback prospect is the most difficult that it's ever been. You know, you can, to me personally, you know, you see programs looking, you know, posting tweets and everything like, we got this commit, and then they've all got an asterisk next to them of like, well, he transferred a year later, or transferred 2 years later. Like, they don't do you a whole lot of good in your program if they're not in your program. If you get an in-state kid, they are more likely, because they buy into the culture. They're close to home. They're close to family. It's a little bit easier for them to buy the developmental aspect. And Matt Rule is very upfront about this. He said, you know, quarterback's a unique position because there's only one that plays on the field. There's no rotation like you have at other positions. You have one quarterback and you ride him throughout the entire game. So you have to be really transparent and open with plans about, you know, potential playing time, where they sit, how you see their development, kind of incremental, and they have to buy into it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You know, you see 3 scholarship quarterbacks for Nebraska enter the transfer portal in the spring, and, you know, I guess one of them still out there, could potentially come back, but the 3 on scholarship that stayed bought into their vision, and one of them is an in-state kid. In fact, the only in-state quarterback they had in the room stayed, and I think that's a testament to the developmental vision and how open and upfront you have to be keeping those in-state kids.
It's Brady Oltmans. Find him, read him, hailvarsity.com. Follow him at Brady Oltmans on Twitter. Brady, we'll see you soon. Thanks for the time.
No problem, guys. We'll see you around.
Yep.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. We will have another steak and beer bet coming up at 5:50. Elijah Herbel hunkered back at the studio. Chris Schmidt here at Haymarket Park. Roadshow Friday as Haymarket Park, the home for the Saltdogs, the Huskers, of course. Dogs open up their 2023 season home opener tonight. Just beautiful weather. Already making Friday night plans, Elijah, to imbibe here at the ballpark. Going to be awesome. So the news that came down, I heard this about 3 o'clock, Sports Center update on Jim Brown. Jim Brown, at one time, the all-time leading rusher for the NFL. You have your GOATs in the NFL, and ESPN put out their position group GOATs. Brown, a legend, and I was a kid that loved watching NFL films. This was pre-NFL Network, so there was a sports shop in town in Lincoln that would let me borrow like the NFL films they would get because they were partnered with the NFL. They'd sell jerseys and hats and all that stuff. And I just remember loved in late night ESPN as a kid, they'd run NFL film stuff, and Jim Brown was incredible. And just being a bit of a historian about the game, you had Jim Brown and Ernie Davis, who passed away due to leukemia, I believe. Mm-hmm. But both those guys were a 1-2 punch at Syracuse in the same backfield. And Jim Brown retired at his height after 9 years, was an incredible back, size, speed, power. And if you're of a certain age demo and you're like, dude, who's Jim Brown? Or I've never watched Jim Brown. Well, a lot of us didn't, but you can appreciate the greatness. Sad day. And Jim retired to get into Hollywood and movies, but then spent a lot of time with social activism and really tried to be a major voice from the sports world. Him and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Muhammad Ali, 3 greats from the 60s that were all about social justice and equality, and, of course, trying to to make the world a better place and rid the world of racism. So they are three guys that are in my mind, but Jim Brown was phenomenal. When we look at this list from ESPN, the GOATs at every offensive position, they've got Brady at quarterback.
Obviously.
Yep. Runner-up is Joe Montana, followed by Peyton Manning, Jim Brown, followed by Barry Sanders, and then Walter Payton, Emmitt Smith, also receiving votes, Marshall Faulk, LaDainian Tomlinson, Eric Dickerson.
And my thought here, and I don't mean to jump into it, but with the running back position, I'm surprised Walter Payton isn't ahead of Barry Sanders. And Barry Sanders was great, but like, don't you have to look at the career as a whole? He was great during the time that he played, but didn't play all that long in the NFL. And he was, stuck on a bad franchise with the Lions. No offense to the Lions, but
so was Walter.
That's true,
with the Bears, but at least he got a Super Bowl.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't know about putting. I guess I see why you put Sanders ahead of Walter Payton, but I kind of see Walter Payton as being the number 2 guy. That was what the list I had in my head before I heard this list from you.
And not to sound crass on the day of his passing, but I could make an argument for Walter over Jim. I mean, just Walter Payton to me is right there, and just the running styles are so different. Barry Sanders was my guy as a kid, and I'd try and make an argument for him over Walter and Jim. That's how much I love Barry Sanders. Just his story of this tiny kid, a no-name kid that kind of lucked into a scholarship at Oklahoma State, even though Nebraska recruited him. It was either Tulsa or Oklahoma State. And when Charlie's on with us, okay, Monday, I want you to ask him about Barry.
Can do.
And his answer is this. He'll be great with it, but his answer was he would scream at the defense, nobody hurt Thurman. Thurman Thomas started in front of Barry Sanders for 2 years. Okay? And like Barry would light Nebraska up, Thurman never did anything. So the message during the week was nobody hurt Thurman because they didn't want to see Barry Sanders come into the ball game. So, listen, Jerry Rice as the GOATs on offense.
Yeah.
Wide receiver, Randy Moss is right there. Is Gronk the best tight end ever? I think he's incredible. You got Tony Gonzalez that's right there, Kellen Winslow. I think Shannon Sharp and Antonio Gates are really good. But Gronk was so big in big moments. And the fact he overcame so many injuries, because, I mean, think about it. The guy had knee and shin, and the guy can't go through a metal detector. I mean, he's got so many screws in his elbow and forearm. Gronk is fun. Offensive tackle.
With the tight end position, what's interesting is we got a guy who's playing right now who could very easily, by the day he retires, be the top tight end in NFL history with Travis Kelce. Kelce's
Sure.
a guy that I could see overtaking guys like Gronk and like
I think Gronk gets
Gonzalez.
it just because Gronk was an end line guy. Not only could he flex out, but he was so good in the run game. He was a true blocker. Mm-hmm. I mean, Kelce gets in people's way. I think he's great, don't get me wrong, but he's more of your slot big body matchup versus your old school throwback tight end where they're going to ask you to seal the edge and block. Because Kelce doesn't do a lot of online blocking, does he?
No. I mean, I think
it's not that he can't. They just
yes.
don't ask him to do it.
It's not what makes him special. I think he can do it just fine, but yeah, not what makes him special is inline blocking. And I guess that's how the tight end position has changed. Not even in the past 20 years. You could even argue in the past 5 years how many tight end threats you have that aren't inline blockers with Darren Waller and Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews. That's how the tight end position is changing. So I'm curious to see what we look back at Travis Kelce's career as once it's all said and done. He's still got a couple good years left in him, and I wouldn't be surprised if by the day he retires, if he ends up being that top tight end.
All right, offensive tackle, near and dear to your heart. Do you go with Anthony Munoz? He was great for Cincy. You got Jonathan Ogden, Orlando Pace, Walter Jones for Seattle. Jackie Slater played 20 years for the Rams. Joe Thomas, Willie Roaf. I got it, honestly, I think Jonathan Ogden's the guy. I think Ogden's the guy. I think Orlando Pace is right there. Larry Allen was incredible.
I mean,
for the Cowboys.
The video of Larry Allen chasing down the linebacker on the pick six is one of those things that will always stand out in your memory of being like, that guy is different. And I am with you. I probably go with Ogden right now, but Larry Brown, come on.
Well, and I think Will Shields needs to be mentioned in this group. He's not in the receiving votes. Will Shields was great. Bruce Matthews there. You have Gene Upshaw, John Hanna. And Coach McBride also coached the all-time greatest center. That's Mike Webster at Wisconsin.
And I think there is another player that, currently active that could be a guy that ends up in that top list when it's all said and done. You know who I'm thinking of here?
Tell me.
I am going the 49ers offensive lineman Trent Williams, the offensive tackle.
Trent's great from Oklahoma.
I think when it's all said and done, he could be another guy that ends up on that GOAT offensive tackle list because he's been so solid for so long.
Very fair. Very fair. Nope. So we remember Jim Brown and what a guy on the field and put a lot of time and effort into education and community off the field as he passed away at age of 87. We'll wind down a Friday. Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity, and we're here at Haymarket Park. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity on the road here at Haymarket Park. The Saltdogs home opener at Haymarket Park for 2023. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, thanks for your time. You can get the podcast version of this show, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Download the segment you want to hear or download the full show. You can also see it on video, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Always watch the show as well, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at Varsity Radio. Give us a follow at Schmidt_radio. At Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. Reminder to get buckled up. 1 in every 3 fatal crashes in Nebraska involves an alcohol-impaired driver. Why take chances if you drink? Don't drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Elijah, how are we feeling, my good man, between the Heat and Celtics tonight? -10. Boston, your Nuggets head to La La Land. It's -5.5. Lakers are favored. The buzz all morning. Well, LeBron's just showing his age. I mean, that's been the talking point all morning, all afternoon. It'll be that way into the evening, and King James will hear it. Anthony Davis, you need more than 18, my man. Okay?
And I think that thought, King James is just showing his age. Yeah, he's older than he was. That is so incredible. It's incredibly disrespectful to the team that the Nuggets have put together right now. I mean, look at the people who have beat LeBron James in the playoff. It's either a historic type team with that Spurs team with Kawhi and an aging Tim Duncan. You had Manu, you had Tony Parker, or it's an individually incredible performance. 2016 Steph Curry and that Warriors teams that took down LeBron. When LeBron loses in the playoffs, it's because he's going up against historically great players or teams. And I think it's a discredit to the Nuggets to say, this is just LeBron showing his age. No, the Nuggets have put together a very, very competitive team. They were the number 1 seed in the West all year long. It was always going to be tough on LeBron. This isn't Father Time showing up and LeBron has lost his ability magically. Age is catching up to LeBron James. He needs some more help, but let's also not discredit what the Nuggets have done.
Good take. And you are right on. When LeBron's been taken out, I mean, he's been outmanned more times than not, except for his Heat team that took down OKC, right? I mean, that's when it was a fair fight. For the most part, it's been LeBron being a Sherpa. Now, I know he's got some talent with AD, and he's got weapons around him, but it's AD's always been a bit of a mystery. Yeah, he's got a bubble ring, I get it, and he's super talented, but I don't know that if he had LeBron's mentality, that would be awesome.
Well, he needs to put up,
and he doesn't.
He needs to put up 30-plus points per game every single game this series if the Lakers want to have a chance. But whenever you put up a stat line like that, yeah, your defense can be great, but you got to keep up with this Nuggets team, and we'll see if they're able to make some adjustments moving forward.
Are we stake and bearing it here before we say goodbye?
Which game? You want to go Heat Celtics tonight?
Sure.
What do you want?
I want to get off the schneid, so I'm letting you pick.
I will take the Celtics to cover. I've seen it at 9.5. Can we take it at 9.5?
Sure, why not?
The NBA needs the Celtics in the finals. The Celtics get back here. I think they cover a 9.5-point line.
They'll check with the commish. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning, weekend edition, 7:30. Hail Varsity YouTube. Take care. Thanks for the time.